Hello everyone. So today we're going to be working on another slightly bizarre food creation, and that is my ice cream monsters. So you can see I'm just starting with a basic triangle for a cone and then creating a big blob on the top. There's a nice big round mouth which I'm just going to shade in. Now you could be using anything for this. I'm using my iPad, but you guys could use marker pens, or I would recommend maybe trying it out in pencil first, just so you can be sure you've got everything where you want it to be. So I've just drawn two simple U shapes upside down for the eyes, and then put a couple of eyebrows in there with a little couple of extra dashes to just sort of show that he's frowning. Now this ice cream blob is appearing like he's in pain because he's being eaten by another one, an ice cream monster. It's a little bit gruesome really, but I hope you like it anyway. So I'm removing a little bit of the top of this blob just to make space for the second ice cream blob to be sitting on top of him. Now, if you'd rather have a much friendlier ice cream, you don't have to make it mean like my one over here, but one of my students inspired me. Narikan was sending me some very strange food creations. I think her ice cream was a shark. I'm going to have another look at it and I will try and attach it at the end of this video. But it inspired me to think about making mine a little bit creepy. So as you can see around the bottom of the blob, inside the blob and just coming in a little bit from those blobs of ice cream, I've just made some small little squiggly lines. That's just to give it a little bit of texture and make it look a bit more three-dimensional. Now you need to decide what kind of flavors this ice cream is going to be. So you could be filling in the color now with marker pen. You could do it on an iPad if you have one the same as me. Or you could be using paints or pencil colors, anything at all really. Now I'm just learning how to use digital art like this. So I'm using Procreate and it's all very new to me. And anyone who's used to using these kind of things will be thinking, why on earth is she doing it like this? I'm sure I'm doing it in a very strange way and taking a very long time about it. But it's all part of the learning process. So I'm filling in this blob that I've done here to look a bit like ice cream sauce red, because then it also looks a little bit gory and scary. Sorry if this is a bit too horrific. I don't really know where my imagination was going on this particular day. And I have made the top blob of ice cream a kind of a bright pink colour, so it looks like a really vibrant strawberry or cherry ice cream. So he's got really sharp fangs coming out from beneath the melted sort of blobs. And I'm using a lighter pink to just go ahead and add some little lines of texture there. So I think whichever colour you choose to use for your ice cream flavour, for your blob, it's always a good idea if you use two tones of that colour. So if you're doing green for like mint choc chip or pistachio, use a lighter green and a darker green and kind of mix them together. It just looks a bit more interesting than if you leave them completely one colour only. Now you can see I've put a few little extra lines in the sharp fangs just to give it some more texture and definition. I've used a little bit of a darker red around the bottom lines of some of that blob of red sauce. My bottom scoop here is going to be a kind of a mint choc chip flavour. So he's got some little darker lines of green just to add sort of some kind of shading down here. And then I'm going to be adding some little chocolatey chips in there as well. So I realised that I probably should have coloured my cone in with a base colour first and then added all of these lines, because to drag and drop the colour is pretty tricky afterwards. But then I'm going to achieve a really cool checkerboard kind of effect with this. So watch and see. Now here is some little chocolate chips just emerging. If you've decided to do yours, maybe like you could do a Smarties ice cream. My son loves his Smarties ice cream, and it's like a scoop of white ice cream with all these little tiny colourful Smarties inside it. You could do something like that, or you could do ice cream with fruits in. So you could add lots of cool little bits of detail. Now I haven't added any sprinkles onto my ice cream, but you could definitely add that afterwards. I'm just choosing a kind of an orangish brownish colour for my cone, and I'm just going to drag and drop to fill these squares individually, which is the long way of doing it. Like, as I said, it would have been much quicker to do the base colour first. But actually, I have chosen to use a few different shades of brownish orange, as you will see in a minute. And then doing it this way has kind of given me the opportunity to do this almost like pixelated effect on the ice cream cone. So if you've already drawn this sort of texture, like I have, the waffle cone with the diagonal lines going across, then you could shade them in all different shades of browns. You could even be super imaginative and do a rainbow coloured ice cream. You don't have to do it the traditional colours. So as you can see, I've got the lightest shade in the middle, and then I'm going a little bit darker and then a little bit darker still around the edges. That's because I want it to look like the light is hitting that middle part of the cone, and then towards the edges it's getting a bit darker. I'm just having to really fiddle with filling in all those little tiny shapes that I've created. But this is one of the first times I've used this for an artwork, so I keep making these little mistakes and then thinking, oh no, why did I do it that way? But it's a fun new thing to try, so I'm trying to get to grips with it. I think that another really good medium to create these cool little ice cream monsters would be paints, because you could achieve that really nice drippy effect. If you had some thick paints like gouache or acrylic paints, you could actually paint those blobs on first before adding any of the detail, then lift up the paper slightly and just with your brush and a bit of water kind of encourage those paints to drip down and get that really drippy effect that you want your blobs to have. And then you could always add some detail with marker pens afterwards when it's dry. So I think that would be another cool option. I might try that. So I'm just adding a little bit more detail to the source here. I've added some little drips coming down, which adds to the level of goriness, but I think it looks kind of cool. I did also end up adding a little bit more darker brown on the edges of the cone there, just to make it look even more three-dimensional, and adding a little wafer at the top here, just with a dark brown around the edge and then a lighter brown on the inside, similar to that of the cone, creating these little ridge shapes and some circles with smaller circles inside, just to have that little pattern that you might find on a ice cream wafer. And using a fine line, I'm just coming in from the edges of one side of the little lines along this wafer to make them look like a really 3D ridge, and filling in those circles a little bit too. So if you just take the time to shade in some of the edges here, it will look a lot more three-dimensional and like they actually have some bumpiness to the wafer. So I ended up as well adding a little bit of white, which you will see in a moment on the final picture, but I think I forgot to record that bit, but added a couple of little dashes of white just to show where the light would be hitting the ice cream if it was a bit shiny, but you don't have to do that. So here is the finished result. And if you have any more ideas for crazy foods, please let me know. This is my banana octopus, which is pretty nuts, but I love him. And you can visit me over at carlyart.org for a whole online art school. And please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. So before I leave you today, let's take a quick look at some fantastic artworks that I've been receiving from artists who are following along with these tutorials. So that was Jack's Rainbow Unicorn, Uros's Feathers, Sophia's drawn my Bacteria Quick Draw, Duchan has drawn the Rainbow Feathers too. I have these marvellous toucans, both from Silka, and her sister Sophie has drawn a toucan too. And here is Alice and Sam with their lovely rainbow feathers. And Cosima's drawn them as well. And I think you've used watercolour paints here, just like I did. And Sam has drawn this brilliant eagle. These are all so awesome, guys. Oh, and a cute cat from Alice. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today. Here's Dominic's Spinosaurus. And I just love the colours you chose for that, Dominic. Well done. Keep that work coming.